Welcome back to another episode of the Immutable Mindset, folks. Our guest today is not just a visionary. He's a maverick who has been at the forefront of innovation for the last 2 decades, challenging brands to build experiences and campaigns that truly bridge the gap between company and consumer. His relentless focus on engagement, be it customer, press, or social, has sparked ideas that have garnered hundreds of millions of impressions, countless news stories, and a level of product trial and adoption that might seem a bit immeasurable. He is Sam Ewen, the SVP and head of CoinDesk Studios, a man whose name has become synonymous with creative thinking and top-tier execution. A true innovator, Sam's been involved in the cutting-edge fields like creative code, human-computer interaction, and AR/VR since 2007. And folks, since this is a Web3 podcast, he's no stranger to blockchain technology, having started his journey when he began mining Bitcoin out of his agency office in late 2013. Boy, do I wish I had that story. Beyond his professional achievements, Sam is a trailblazer in the world of Web3 and the host of the Gen Z podcast. His insights and conversations are shaping the discourse around blockchain and cryptocurrency and the future of technology itself. And then let's not end here, but his commitment goes beyond his own successes, people. A professor of media and propaganda at the City University of New York's Hunter College, Sam is devoted to educating and mentoring the next generation of innovators, and that's so important. Today, folks, we're going to dive and delve into his journey, his vision for the future of Web3, and his thoughts on how brands can adopt these new technologies. So without further ado, world, Sam Ewen.
Hey, y'all. Thank you for having me.
I'm very trigger happy with that air horn. It's my new toy on my Roadcaster. I apologize.
Oh, good.
Oh, it's a joy. Sam, welcome, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, and excited to be on the pod.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we do, I'm sure there's our guests that are very familiar with you and CoinDesk, but I do like to bring everybody up to speed. So if you would be so kind, Sam, can you share a bit about your background, a little bit about your career journey and, what's led you to your role at SVP, head of CoinDesk?
It's head of CoinDesk Studios.
Excuse me.
I don't want to get in trouble, but I mean, I guess the question is really how far back do we want to go?
We want to go to the conception in the back of the Chevy.
It was probably more like a Ford van or something, but no, I mean, for me, honestly, I've always liked the idea of just putting myself into situations that seemed a little bit interesting to me. And I kind of made my careers more than my careers made me, I would say. So even back when I was in college, I was at the University of Wisconsin. I was really interested in the music industry. Specifically around music production, because I was kind of a child of like 90s hip hop or late 80s 90s hip hop. And so, for me, there was like something really interesting about the idea that this was a music that kind of anyone could do, because all you really needed was some turntables and a sampler, and you could create magic and exactly. And so, I mean, I bought all of those things. And while I was in college, I started throwing house parties. I kind of got really interested in writing about music, which I did. I was part of the college radio station as well. And then just like, I think the first big sort of aha moment for me was, I remember I was looking at the back of a Public Enemy record. I forget if it was the first one or the second one. And I saw that they recorded at a place called Green Street Recording, which was down in Soho in Manhattan. And I just called up and I said, can I come down and talk to y'all? And this guy, Dave Harrington, who was the studio manager, said, come through. And then he was like, we hung out for about an hour. He said, oh, you want an internship? And I said, yeah. And I was like, sure, no worries. And I literally knew nothing about audio recording. I didn't know anything about being an engineer. I just literally had turntables. And, but I was able to kind of try by fire, just be in the studio at such a seminal moment like that, like working sessions, everything from Public Enemy to like, there's probably 3 or 4 songs on Low End Theory from Tribe Called Quest that were recorded there. Ice Cube's first record was recorded partly there. I ended up working on a couple of PE records, and, LaToya Jackson and Bette Midler, all these different folks who came through. And I started as an intern, and then I became an assistant engineer. And part of it was just like, I kind of learned really early that like asking and hustling go hand in hand. So like making your path, you know?
They have to. I want to pause you on that for a second here, because and I talk a lot about it on my show, the value of those early internships.
Yeah.
Right. Those lessons learned. And one of the big ones that I always tell people, as much as you're going to learn from an internship, Sam, it's what you learn you're going to not like. And when you're trying to not replicate moving forward, was there something in those early days where you're like, shit, I hate doing this. I never want to do this as my full-time job. Like an element of it, a part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, for example, back in those days, we would do recording sessions, and sometimes those recording sessions would be 12, 15, 20 hours long and would start at like 11 p.m.
Just go.
You know? And so, you know, the idea of like just getting comfortable or uncomfortable with like having to break night. And, you know, and at the time when you're an intern, you're just like, I'm the lowest peon. So like at 4 a.m, someone being like, go get me cereal and milk, you know, because someone just has a craving. Right. Exactly. You know, and you're like, I'm like walking around the streets of Soho looking for any store that's open so that I can find something. Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I don't know, but I do think, so I think I learned, like in the long run, I learned that I wanted to like make my own hours. But I will also say that I looked at all of it with just the attitude of, again, let's like make your way. While I was doing that, for example, I also was writing about music. I was an English major and did a lot of journalism. And I remember the largest hip hop magazine at the time was called The Source.
Oh, yeah.
So you know, at some point I was just like, and there wasn't email at the time. So I was literally like calling and being like, I want to write for you guys. And I, you know, at the third or fourth time, they were like, all right, send us an article, you know? And so like I found it the other day. I wrote the first article about hip hop on the internet in like 89, I think it was. Because I was like surfing bulletin boards looking for people like me, and, you know, said, oh, there's this vibrant community happening on the internet all around hip hop. And, you know, so those things I think were just like making your own career, even with it, you know, because I've also worked at corporations and everything, but I think it created an opportunity where I just said there's never like a no. There's just a like how, right? And figuring that out.
I feel such a trigger moment right now, Sam. A different era, but, you know, I grew up on Fruity Loops, right? So I grew up on you can make a beat on anything. So I was in a rap group from the ages of 16 to 22.
We need to find this.
Oh my gosh, it's horrible. I have the CDs, y'all. I have the CDs. Okay, that's what we used to put them on. But what, you know, talking about the studio, I went to school in Atlanta. I used to spend 18 hours a day in the studio, and that experience of in itself it's an amazing experience because of what you have to focus on and key on. And, you know, even you being an intern and just being like, you're just soaking it all up, and it provides such a rich experience, quite like the ones that we are trying to provide in everything that we're doing here. So I find that as such an interesting parallel as a start for you, because that's exactly all I know. You know, Nas was my first album that made sense to me, and really growing up in hip hop and understanding the culture. And it feels like that's what we're rehashing right now, is all that beginning. And I get that real beginning vibe. What, you know, go ahead, Adam. I think you know where I'm going at.
No. Go with it. Go with it. I'm feeling it. I
was just, you know, in terms of rich experience, and maybe this is what you were going to talk about, but, you know, in digital advertising and experiential marketing and brand experience, you know, how did those early experiences, those, you know, being immersed in the culture, something new, something creative and innovative, how did that prepare you for your role in Web3 and kind of what you're doing now and what we're going?
I mean, it's a journey. I was fortunate enough that, you know, I went from music. I realized I was never going to make enough money in music, but because I was charting things, I was charting hip hop on the internet. I started my own newsletter all about hip hop production that I put on the internet. I taught myself how to code HTML pages back in the day, and then I started getting hired. You know, I was a 20-year-old kid getting hired for like $75 an hour to make people's web pages. And so I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe actually this is the play for me. So I went and left kind of the music biz, because I just felt like, I mean, you know, Kevin, I don't know about your CDs, but I will say that one of the things I think a lot of us realize when they're in music business is there's certain levels of talent, and then there's certain and there's certain levels of luck, and those things have to synergize for you to actually make it in the music business. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have someone who has a lot of talent who just doesn't get lucky, and vice versa. And at some point I was just like, I think I'm good, but I don't think I'm great. Like, and I knew it, you know? And so I really loved the community and the aspect of knowledge, and I love DJing and all of that kind of stuff. But I was like, I just don't think this is where my place is. But I was like, I see this thing happening in tech. And at that time it was like, you know, just past the AOL years and all of that. And so I was like, I wonder if I can get a job in this, because I knew enough about coding and doing this and that. I was not a very good coder. But so I got a job as a producer on digital advertising. But this was back in the day when like it was like Yahoo was the biggest search engine. You know, like, you know, there was a lot of websites that don't exist anymore, but that were super popular. And I was lucky enough to get a job at an agency that I just did really well at, because I think I could speak the language, I could talk it. And I think the one thing I learned from my time in the music business and interning was like, I'm pretty comfortable in almost any room. And so even if I don't know it, I know enough that I can have a conversation. And in our business, like there's something just about being comfortable where you're willing to be creative, you're willing to like just mix it up with people, that gets people, I think, comfortable. Like, oh, this guy gets it. Let me give him some of my money to like, because he'll figure out what to do with it, you know? And so in my agency life in the beginning, it was just like, I'm going to find out if we can do something. I'll figure out how to make it. Then I kind of, one of the people who I worked with started an agency. She brought me on. I was employee number 4. So we took a bet, you know, and that was also the beginning of my time, both in digital advertising, but also in experiential. Because at the time we were doing a lot of offline work, but we were focused on online companies as being our clients, because most of them didn't know how to go offline with their advertising. And so, you know, I started number 4, but you fast forward a year, 2 years later, I'm the president of the company. We have 42 employees. Omnicom comes knocking and buys a big chunk of our company. You know, we just happen to be right place, right time, with enough talent and enough luck, right? The same theme.
That's the way it works.
Yeah. And that was an amazing experience. And we also, like, honestly, we took a bunch of money. We also burned that place to the ground at the end. It was, you know, but that also, like, I learned so much more in failure than I do in success. So after that experience, after that experience, I was like, I can go work for somebody else, or I can try to start something on my own. And I was like, you know, why not? And so I basically started my own agency in 2000, early 2001, with a focus on being the best experience guerrilla marketing event agency that there was. And because at the time there weren't very many people doing it. A lot of people were doing promotional agencies, or they were doing PR stunts, but there wasn't that many of us who were out there looking and saying, how do we actually make this into a marketing discipline? And so again, I just think I just caught an early wave of what became super popular when social hit. Like we had everything ready to go once social became a thing, but we had been doing it for 5 years, 6 years before that. And before social hit, my whole thing was, can I get the press to come out? And if I can get the press to come out, then I can exponentially make people sort of a return on their investment. And just, you know, I was creative enough, and I was willing to take risks that a lot of people wouldn't take in order to create that opportunity.
So let me ask you this: if you kind of look back at your timeline and time capsules now, where are we on that timeline with very broad Web3? Where are we? I think we're still pretty much first inning, maybe second at bat. We're a little past the first at bat, maybe, you know, midway through that first inning of the game. Where would you say that we're at right now if you're looking at it in a comparison?
I look at it a little bit different than that. And I will say it because of the following, which is, I don't think Web3 is a foregone conclusion. I love the technology. I love the opportunity, but there's a lot of technologies that I've been involved with in my career that are no longer around, right? I remember putting brands into Second Life in 2014, 2015.
The original metaverse.
And we thought it was going to, right? We thought it was going to be a thing,
metaverse, right? Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and got people to spend a lot of money in doing those things, you know? And so,
do you mind just on that piece? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by you're not sure if Web3 will make it?
So the premise that I've been going on recently, and this is to some degree inspired by the co-host on Gen C, who's Avery Akinini from Vayner.
Big ups to Avery.
Yeah, Avery's amazing. And so
she's the best.
She talks a lot about the idea of Web3 being the era of the connected consumer. Yep. And so I buy into that, but I actually have been expanding that in my thinking, which is the era of the connected consumer, the empowered creator, and the relationship with ownership. right? And that those three things are very, very important. Now, I will say we spoke to a woman on our podcast comes out today, and I don't know when yours comes out, but today, June 12th, ours comes out. And we spoke with a woman named Ashley McCullum from Roblox last week. The podcast comes out today. Roblox isn't playing that much in Web3. They've been sort of decidedly not. But when I look at something that has 60 million people a day coming in, that has 5 million creators working on the platform, including that has their own digital currency, that now has built, and they just launched like 2 or 3 weeks ago, a marketplace where now people can sell on secondary markets, and that they're guaranteeing 10% royalties to original creators on those secondary. I'm like, it's not that different. And I don't think we should be trying to drag them down, you know? And so I think it's more about what does it mean to be a creator today, where you can have a little bit more agency over your career? What does it mean to be an investor or a collector, and what you can do with those assets? And then what does it mean to be creative thinkers who are like looking into innovation? And I just think that the blockchain does amazing things, and I'm very bullish on the blockchain. But a lot of people are trying to recreate things in Web3 that don't need to exist in Web3, but they put a Web3 layer and they're like, this is going to happen. And I'm like,
solving problems from your own created problems.
Right, exactly. And so that's why I just don't know if we've yet seen what it will become for us to say that it's a foregone conclusion. The regulatory environment in the US also doesn't help, right? And so I'm hoping that they get out of their own way in the next 6, 12, 18 months. And especially with the elections coming, you never know. But I'm just saying, I think like where at one point we were like, blockchain is an easier way to do X. We're starting to see it may actually not be an easier way to do X. And so that's why, you know, I'm again bullish on the overarching technology and the innovation, but I'm not necessarily bullish on all the use cases.
I'm 100% there with you, Sam. You know, I am 100% bullish on the technology for it to create efficiencies with a lot of the things that we do online, but also agreed that blockchain technology is not the solution to every single problem that we have on the internet. You know, there are a lot of tenets for which we can use it, which, you know, are huge for our society. Like voting would be an interesting use case for block. Like there's a lot of very interesting, but a lot of the financialization things that we're using it for, you know, don't make sense. And to your end, I very much believe we're going to realize a Web 2.5 world versus that Web 3 world. And, you know, will there be like a dark web portion where like Web 3 exists? Sure. Because there's going to be your decentralization maxis and your libertarian maxis that still believe in all the tenets, but like keeping stuff real. Most people just want their stuff to go faster, want it to work a little bit better. Like so, to your end, cheaper. Roblox. We don't need to demonize Roblox for not being 100%. You know all this. If there's already 50 million people, then there's probably a use case, and they probably like it, right? So I 100% agree with you that we don't need to move to a world where where like it feels like there's less people that want to inhabit it versus the majority. And yeah, I don't think that makes sense either. In terms of next steps, and as we're thinking about the development, and you know, obviously you kind of mentioned it, the regulatory environment that we're seeing now. Are where are you seeing, well, we could talk about it, right? Coinbase and Binance just happened. A lot of these bigger stories are coming out. Where are you hearing from, or where are you seeing brands? Are they pausing? Do you think are they trying to see what happens? Is it full speed ahead? Just curious what the landscape is, kind of in the environment we're talking about that you see.
I mean, we talk to brands every week, and I think brands are generally kind of bullish. I think there is. I saw a tweet over the weekend, and I don't remember who sent it, so I apologize by not being able to cite. But I saw a tweet over the weekend where someone said we should make the distinction between brands that are building in Web3 and brands that are selling in Web3.
I saw that.
And I thought that was a really interesting way to frame it, because I think that we have seen a lot of brands who have come in and says, oh, here's an audience that has some money. Let's play with them. And I think that they say the words, and they have the consultants or they have the advisors, and they do the drops, and maybe they partner with the artist. But are they truly committed into what it means to be in crypto? I got into crypto because I wanted to, besides the fact that I love the innovation from a very long time ago, 10 years or so now, I like the idea that someone who is in the middle of Africa, who is an amazing designer that I can hire. I can pay them in a common currency that normalizes to the highest that someone will pay for it. And that person can potentially transform their lives through that relationship in a currency that can't be manipulated by their government or our government. And I think that to me is very exciting.
Yes.
Right. It's super interesting. And the idea of financial freedom and sovereign identity and being able to sort of own and have the agency around what you want in the world. So that I think is very exciting. I don't know if half the brands that are dropping NFTs care about that, believe in it, actually want that. And I think that's one of the big challenges that I think. So when I look at Nike's drop, which I'm a fan of, right? Super accessible price point, relatively, like they had some challenges, but like generally went pretty well. 97,000 of these were
I got
sold.
4.
I have 7, I think, at this point. But the thing about that is, what I respect is Nike saying, we don't know how many folks in crypto are buying these. On the flip, how many people are within our audience are now we bring into the blockchain. And then thirdly, the idea, because, the day after they closed it, they announced the thing with EA Sports, where I'm like, oh, this is a gaming play, right? Like, let's not make any mistake. This is like a new customer, but it's really about enabling a really interesting use case in something that I think we can all believe in, which is like, if I go buy some Air Force Ones and I want to play a game, I should be able to wear the Air Force Ones in the game, and I shouldn't necessarily have to pay extra for it, or I shouldn't, and if I have 3 different games, I should be able to use that. Like, I do think that I saw a study that was actually part of what Roblox, I was doing my research with them. They did a study with Parsons that said, I think it was something like 60% of Gen Z folks are comfortable buying digital wearables, right? If I ask my parents, they're not interested in buying digital wearables, right? But the fact that like anyone who's grown up in gaming environments is totally fine. Like, I want individuality within that world. That makes sense. And the idea that like maybe I can resell it when I don't want it anymore also makes sense. So like I look at that and I'm like, they're walking the walk compared to some of the other things that we've seen.
Yeah.
And even, I don't know if you guys saw the Mercedes drop last week.
I did. And it sold out.
Yeah. It sold out. I think I bought one of them or maybe 2 of them. But what I loved is like, let's use generative art. Let's work with a really interesting artist. The art kind of has a halo of machinery to it, right? But it's not so direct that it needs to be the Porsche drop that we also had. And I was like, you know what? I would put this on a frame and have it be in rotation of art on my wall. Like, that would be no problem.
Right.
Yeah. And so that one I was like, it didn't have very much Mercedes, to be honest, but I like the idea that at least they're saying, let's look at movement and transportation and kind of these interesting generative forms as a way to express our desire to at least talk to these audiences.
Yeah. That's, in terms of, going back to what you said originally and, going back to like the killer app of crypto, it's what you said. Somebody that designs some really cool shit in Africa can get paid in a common currency, can settle in a common currency instantaneously. Don't have to worry about your gut. Like, that's I within reason hope we get back to a place where that's like the main conversation we're having, and then everything else is kind of on the back end. I think, to your point, what Nike is doing is absolutely cool. I thought it was, honestly, I thought the numbers were low. I think there was only 56,000 people that minted. I actually expected a lot larger number from that, even in a bear market. So honestly, I was a bit surprised by that. We're just curious. Were you? How did you feel about the turnout? Did that?
I was not as worried about the turnout, and I'll tell you why. There's a couple reasons. One, it was their first real drop. If you looked just at the analytics, right? Like, they only had 26,000 followers on the .swoosh handle.
That's
so
true.
That, this isn't
getting notified.
This is not the Nike main handle, right? Not to mention you had to have a .swoosh address in order to mint,
sure.
right? So if they had put it on the main handle, they would have had a ton of disappointment.
That's a good point.
So, you know what I mean? And so I think, like, in that respect,
that's a good point.
Like, whatever. There's 360,000 people who have a .swoosh address. So maybe 20% of them minted. Like, I'm like, that's not terrible numbers from, like, if you look at just direct response.
No,
like,
definitely.
It's not bad from a marketing perspective. I think what they will do with it will determine.
That's a good point.
the opportunity. And again, at least they're trying. And I think in that respect, they have 97,000 digital assets now in the world that didn't exist.
That point, interestingly, I'll guarantee a whole new huge subset of people got super excited the day after when EA Sports announced what they announced. In fact, I literally had 4 friends that asked me if it was too late to mint because they realized they had missed out. So I had the same thing. There you go.
Yep.
So kind of segueing this a little bit, I want to talk about CoinDesk, and in the sense, man, me and Adam we were at Consensus this year, and you guys freaking killed it. I mean, I love the space. I love the section you guys created. It was a great experience in itself. It was a place where we hung out the most and did our media stuff. So just kudos there. You know, in terms of that, you've been a pioneer in creating these experiences, right? That bridge that gap between the company and the consumer, as we mentioned. How do we apply that approach to build, you know, I know we're talking Web 2.5, Web 3, right? But how do we take that approach to build that Web 3 culture, a true Web 3 culture?
There's a couple things there I think that are interesting. So when I've been at CoinDesk almost 2 years now. When I came in, one of the things that I was hired to do was, because I have a background in experiential, was to help think about what we could reimagine Consensus to be. Consensus for the first 5 or 6 years was primarily a hotel ballroom.
It was New York, right?
Yeah, in New York, like a Sheraton, like very financial focused show. Mm-hmm. Then we had the pandemic, right? And then the pandemic we go virtual for a little bit. And then when we reimagined it coming out of the pandemic, we were like, let's create this as a festival format, which really just means break out of our own way of like it just being finance focused. Let's make sure the culture is there. Let's have all sides. Like we really want to be the big tent of this. Our goal is, I feel often, to be the interpreters of what's happening in the world and giving voice to the people who are building amazing work. And so that's why we went to Austin. Austin is a fantastic city to be able to do that work.
It was so awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's going to complain about going to Austin for a few days.
No, definitely not.
It's not like Indianapolis.
No comment.
But I do think that, and I will say last year when we did it, which was also in Austin, it was a bull market, right? So we had almost 20,000 people come down last year. It was wild.
But it's still pretty packed this year.
No, this year we had almost 15,000, but there were a couple of big.
We were surprised by the turnout.
Yeah, no, it was a great turnout. One of the things that at least I looked at was, we designed a lot of, and I was instrumental working with the team designing a lot of the Web3 programming and experience. And one of the first things I said is we can't give stage time to people who are not building in the space. So one of the first things we did is we took a whole group of people who normally speak at these conferences,
aka
who are
influencers.
really more personalities, influencers, and we sort of said, all right, they're not getting on stage, and we're going to focus on. There are people who are influential and are building, and who have that kind of same hype, but they're backing it up. And so for them, we'll give them a voice and an opportunity.
Love that.
But yeah, I was very careful to say, I don't want anyone on that stage who hasn't earned a right. And the earning isn't because you know how to do Twitter Spaces, And so that was one of the things that we did. And then the second thing was, how do you craft a narrative, which is like, we did a 1-day brand and creator summit, which was Wednesday. So we had those conversations all 3 days, but we did a focus of an entire day just of that. And my whole focus there was, I want people to look at people like Josie Bellini, who's building Cyberbrokers, or Eric Calderon, who's building Art Blocks, in the same way they should be looking at Salesforce and Pepsi and Anheuser-Busch. That all of them are innovators, building amazing work, are masters of their craft, and that they have a right to be seen on the same level, because you don't know that Art Blocks won't be that in 10 years, right? So let's just start it by saying they all get the same platform. And I think that was really important for me to really talk to our audience and say, you shouldn't be counting out just because there's a brand name behind it, that these people aren't also creating amazing companies, and those companies deserve respect.
So one little hot take, and I could have taken this offline, but there's a good platform to talk about it. When we were in that side place at the Sunset Room, when they had those talks in there was a vibe and an energy and just literally, lack of a better word, consensus of the right people in the right place at the right room who were feeding and yearning to see that audience on stage. How do you take that and replicate it in a larger space in the Austin Convention Center? that was kind of my takeaway after. All right, so here's the feedback I'm going to give these guys. How do they do that next year? But still, you always have the sponsors that you need to give the airtime to and give them the time of day. But how do you create that energy and vibe in a big room? So that was my takeaway. I felt so good in there. There was great conversations. It was great back and forth and dialogue versus a big panel in the middle of a conference center where the conversations are audibly getting lost and the audience is coming in and out and being more transient.
I mean, I think they both can coexist. I think if I closed out the brand summit with a conversation with myself, Kevin Rose, and Bobby Hundreds, and I think and it was really to look at, what will the future say about this moment in Web3. That was really the topic, and it was really so we opened it up with all these people are coming in, and let's talk to OpenSea and Pepsi and people like Amanda Cassatt who are writing about and creating agencies to support this. And then we closed it with how are people in the future going to look at this moment? I want, like Kevin and Bobby and Amanda and Raja from OpenSea, I want them to get the recognition of the work they're doing. And I think that in that respect, they could, the room, if we were in the Sunset Room, which was again more of our Web3 hangout space, I think it would have just been too big. The crowds would have been too big. I mean, if you put Bobby on stage or Kevin on stage, they're going to fill a room, And so, we had 450 people in for most of those sessions. And it was designed, the biggest brands, we have Amazon Web Services talking about what they're building. I think that deserves a big stage, right? But again, putting them alongside, Andy Sachs, who's helping to build the Starbucks ecosystem, but who is they're a smaller agency that has reimagined what loyalty can look like. To me, that was really important. I don't think that stage itself didn't feel Web3 when we were there. I thought it felt very vibey. I felt like, we can control lighting, we can zone sound, we can make it feel special. And last year we had a lot of success at the Sunset Room of that being our community space. And so we wanted just to keep it because we know that intimacy matters a lot within our community. And you don't need that in the financial side, but you do need that in the Web3 side.
Yeah, it was an interesting dichotomy to see a lot of the worlds crossing over. That was kind of my takeaway. Like, as of late for me in my journey, I spent a lot of time more on the NFT kind of side of conferences and events. So for me, this was a more inclusive one of seeing the other sides, all the builders, the different layers, and all the players that were involved in the space, and how they interacted together. That was a personal takeaway for me, and it was cool to see the commingling and seeing it all work together.
Yeah, it felt like it. Honestly, it felt more like a space of education. It felt like a more constructive space where I could have where I could actually take the time to have conversation with folks. Sometimes the bull market can be a little bit too bullish. I've been to 2 events where there's a lot of different projects and entities I wanted to talk to, but it was just too crazy. So I like that it was a little more intimate in that sense, and to that end, I don't imagine that's going to be the case long term, right? We're going to grow, we're going to get bigger. I think this next bull market isn't too far off. How do you, as you guys continue to grow and get bigger, how do you keep these events more intimate? And you continue to make sure that we are elevating those actual builders and pioneers that are building the foundation for what we're doing, and not allow that influential side to come in at, how do you scale that?
I think there's two ways. And again, I don't love talking about other people's events, but I will say, just as a comparison, right? NFT NYC over the last 2 years, each year has had about 1,300 speakers.
I may have been talking about
we have and we have 350 to 400. Yeah. So we have a third of them of the amount of speakers, and that's partly because one, we don't let anyone get on stages, and we also, the only way like a sponsor can get on stage is, all right, if you sponsor an entire stage, we'll give you a session, and but even that we curate because we want to make it a session that people will take away from. So you can't sales pitch at our sessions, right? So by being editorial in nature from the jump, we allow the opportunity to say, I understand what you build. Let's talk about why that matters, as opposed to, you don't see a lot of keynote decks, being presented on stages at Consensus. It's really about a conversation. And it wants to be the most important conversation in crypto. I mean, Consensus is where Jack Dorsey first talked about Block or Square taking crypto. We had early, experiences with Vitalik and with, Joe Lubin from Consensus, and all these like pioneers of crypto have been on our stages. And I think they've recognized that the most important moments in crypto happen at Consensus. And we don't take that lightly. I think that's part of it, which doesn't mean that someone who was on stage this year, next year won't be like, oh, that was a rug, or might be like that person decided to go into AI. Like that's going to happen. But I think the one thing that we do hear consistently from people who come, both attendees and speakers, is it's the most meaningful event for them to network, to do business, to invest or be invested in, and to learn. And all of those things, like if we just say that's what we want to happen out of this, then we're doing our job.
Yeah, no, sorry, 1,000,000% agree. This, if you're in Web3, you conference, but I definitely have to agree. That was one of the conferences where Sincerely was able to really dive deep, really take my takeaways and go ahead.
So what was a big takeaway this year that we're going to switch up for next year? What was a big learning moment, Sam?
I think we're in a really interesting space right now. I think so. Last year when we had Consensus, literally the week, it started to happen as we were at Consensus. 3 Arrows Capital started to fail, right? And then it was like Voyager, and then we had FTX 3 or 4 months later that CoinDesk broke the story of, right? So like we have been seeing that this thing, the last bull market was built a little bit on an unstable foundation. This Consensus was really about what do we do knowing that, right? Like I sort of, in my head, I look at like the unofficial theme being proof of humanity. Like how do we be better people with each other, and how do we be better entrepreneurs, better investors, and better artists, etc. I think we're still like figuring that out. I'm not expecting that this thing turns around immediately. And I think anyone who is promising that, I would be very wary of. I'm not someone like, I get that people made a lot of money with Pepe coins. I don't think that's necessarily good for our industry. I get that everyone drops a 10K NFT collection. I don't think that's necessarily good for our industry. I think we need to focus on what is transformational and how do we get there. And really it should be community first, I think, is the real, let the entrepreneurs build interesting use cases, but people got to use it and you can't force it. And I think a lot of people are still kind of in that get rich quick mindset that, didn't get help by the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Regardless of what they're building now, and they're building some really interesting stuff, it did not help that people were like, oh, I spent $300 and I sold something for $400,000.
Yeah.
Because then everyone's like, I can do that too. Right? But like there's one Mr. Beast, right? Like, and it's really hard to be him, And we shouldn't all think we can be, in the same way that we shouldn't all think that every NFT we buy, every coin we buy, everything we build is going to be amazing. Most of it is going to fail. And to me, that's okay. I don't mind that.
Man, I'm sorry. That was powerful. There can only be one Mr. Beast. Gosh, can we put that on social and just put some ads to that? It feels, that's the only thing Sam, I freaking love this space with all my heart. I started in this space with the purity of Bitcoin and just trying to figure out the financial side of things. But then I grew to love the NFT side. DeFi 2020 was immense to me. Loved it. I love the degens I get to speak with. But man, oh man, goes without saying, Consensus being an absolute harbinger of the way to do it. But ever since, like, it just feels like so much on social and so much of what we do is just this. Oh, what's a nicer way of not? I don't want to say this. Interest. We like to talk circle jerk. Okay, we like to do this big circle jerk in Web3 where we get up on spaces and we all talk about the same things, and it's just nobody's pushing the space forward. Okay. But then I see awesome organizations like what you have. And then, for instance, right, education, podcasts. I see what the Gen Z, what you and Avery are doing with that. Those are the things, those are the times and events and spaces where we can educate in a way that's going to make sense to people, so that it's not about, because even when I say bull market, I don't mean money. I actually mean adoption and education. Like, I really care. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. I want this space to be somewhere for them, right? And so I'm talking about the podcast and what you guys are doing with Gen Z and even what me and Adam are doing here with the Immutable Mindset. We care about adopting the next human being and not the next billion. Can you share, in terms of what you guys are doing with Gen Z? I listened to a couple episodes the other day. You guys are tackling some of the challenges of Web3. What are some of the most, interesting topics or guests you've had in the recently? Or obviously I know the state of things right now, so I'm sure you got some interesting things you're diving into.
Well, first I want to jump on what you said though for a second, which is the two most damaging things that we have done in Web3 The first is that we all believed that WAGMI was a
Oh my
thing,
gosh.
right? The idea that we're all going to make it is
Triggering.
It's not just triggering. It's
False narrative.
But it's almost more
It's
like
disgusting.
there's fraud
It's
based in
disgusting.
it.
Oh,
Right?
100%.
Exactly. The idea that like, and if you remember those early days of 2021, early 2022, anyone who said anything negative about any collection was dragged, right? Like you couldn't be negative about the space. Anyone who's been through business as long as we have has known that things are cycles. But there was such an optimism that was really damaging. And then so one is WAGMI, I think, was such a challenge and should never have happened, right? Number two is this sort of almost mimetic that people talk about of the next 100 million users, the next billion users. When they talk about that, they are talking about exit liquidity. That's all they're talking about, right? How many people are coming in to say, we need 100 million users. Why? Because someone has to buy my bags. That's the only reason they're doing it. To your point, Kevin, they're not doing it because of the technological adoption. They're saying that's how the collection price rises. And like, I'm a Chromie Squiggle Maxi. I want that to be worth, $1 million, $1 billion. I would love that. It doesn't mean I'm going to sell it though, because it has more meaning to me. And are there a couple of artifacts from this age that I think in the future will be looked at as these were those sort of totem moments and objects that we should be collecting? 100%. 99% of these things are going to be completely worthless. I look at my wallets every other day and I'm like, why did I buy that? Right? I didn't need that. And then when I look what I spent on some of it, it's crazy, right? But the fact is, like, we were all playing the game, and I just think it's okay.
Can I respond to that too, please, Sam?
Yeah, please.
Sam, we are here because of WAGMI. We are in this exact stupid ass place because let's keep it real. The fraudsters and scammers figured it out, and it's like politics, right? If you talk shit about your side, well then, how dare you? And that's what happened, WAGMI. And so I saw so many people become bag holder, diamond hands, right? Like even diamond hands, same bullshit narrative that creates exit liquidity. And I'm sorry, but you gave me goosebumps when you said that. That's exactly what I say. I've been saying this for so long, any single time I hear anybody say, we're going to adopt the next billion, number one, I know you're full of shit. And I know you have the biggest bags that are down the most. And you literally need a billion people so that you can break even. That's what it sounds like to me. That's how much bullshit we're hurling at the average user or the average person who doesn't understand this space. And so to your point, we talk about we even talk about like our mom and dad, but even that's the lowest common denominator, right? Like my sisters grew up with an exponential technology in their face, a cell phone. So this all makes total sense to them, and they want nothing to do with it because of WAGMI, right? So interestingly, we've created this culture where we're not including, we're excluding, which is the opposite of what blockchain technology is supposed to be doing. Sorry, you gave me goosebumps when you said what you said, because it pisses me off. This is exactly what I've been talking about.
Blame the apes.
I don't blame the apes at all. What I blame is a culture that wants to support cognitive dissonance at its core, right? The idea of you being an ape, most apes also bought a lot of other stuff that's down, right?
Very, very true.
And they also there's a ton of manipulation that happened behind the scenes that we all know of, right? And these groups of people who
the players are still here.
Let's pump this.
And the players are still here today.
Well, a lot of them are still here. So some of them got wrecked, but the fact that we allowed it to happen, as opposed to saying, and again, because we were like part of this rallying cry that like Randy Zuckerberg makes a song about, and she was just part of caught up in the hype like everybody else. Let's be honest, right? But I just think that we having intelligent conversations about the ills of the internet and the beauty of the internet, the ills of social media and the beauty of social media, the ills of AI and the beauty of it, and same with Web3 is important for us to move forward. And I think we can do that with intention and with like intellectual like honesty, and we can bring something to it that I think can be transformational. We just got to get there. To your other question, Gen Z.
Please.
So
sorry.
What we do.
Good memory. Remember that one.
Yeah. What we're doing with Gen Z is, when Avery and I decided to do the show, was there was no one who was just week in, week out documenting how brands were getting involved in the space. And so what we wanted to have on record these people who would talk about their exploration. Some are skeptical, some are bullish, but thinking, if we buy the premise that Web3 can be transformational, and we buy the premise that we can't just get there with Web3 brands, that we're going to need some of the other brands in the world to adopt this, the Nikes and the Starbucks and the whatever of the world, then I wanted to hear those people early. So we had that on record as here's people and how we're doing. And secondly, how do we train other brands who are interested in doing that? Right. So like our first guest that we ever had, we're recording episode 30 this week. So nice. we're 30 deep. But our first guest was Matt Kalish, president of DraftKings.
DraftKings, yep.
Right. So Kalish is great. But the thing was, he comes on and he's like you almost can't think that why weren't they doing this? Right? Like that mindset, their audience, it all made sense. Well, fantasy football and the idea of trading players and building a team and data informing stats that make one asset or another more or less valuable.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah, that is crypto.
That's what I said.
Right?
I always say word Final Fantasy. That's what tribal is. That's why we're all tribal.
Yeah, and their Rainmakers project, to me, I was like it was such a good first brand because like that it fits them, which doesn't mean, by the way, that Clorox needs to do it. And so part of what we do is kind of look and say, it doesn't mean like we don't think every brand needs to be in this, but the ones who it matters for, it matters. So when you have Kalish or we had Sophie Kelly from Diageo talking about how it usually would take them a long time to sell out rare spirits, but by putting them on chain with people who get value in collectibles, they sell out their rare spirits collection in 12 minutes. That's like a different audience, a different way of thinking about it.
Absolutely.
And so what we try to do is highlight those stories. And we've also spoken to people who are like, we're trying, like we're not full in. And I think that's important to be able to look at that. So that was part of the idea around this was talk to people of all different types. We have a couple of key Web3 brands in there, but most of it is Web2 brands, Web1 brands that are saying, I wonder if there's a place for me here and I'm going to try. And I think if that can help inspire the next brand to say, oh, maybe I can do that too. I think that's really important for us to have that record.
I love that. And I wonder if there's a place from me here and we ought to try sounds a hell of a lot like what AI is today. You recently tweeted about a generative art project you guys are working on. I believe it's Smoke. Pronounced Smoke?
With a 3?
Smoke 3? Smoke 3?
Smoke 3. Smoke, yeah, however you want to. Yes. This was not an AI.
The 3 is silent.
No, generative art. No. Segue.
This wasn't generative art.
No.
This was commentary because we had the smoke coming in from Canada, and all that was so that was just a weather map that I said looked like a gen art project, and so I basically was just making a joke.
I'm shocked that no one even created that. I mean, it was wild.
But I love that we thought this was real.
Now. Allow me to meme myself. Then meme myself. That'll be coming.
Hey, has anyone done meme myself and I? Because that would be a perfect thing.
I have 3 ideas that just hit my head right now. I need to write this down. Yes, I'll be doing it.
De La Soul. Anyway, going back to the hip hop.
That's right. Well, I know we're getting here close to the end of our show, but one of the things, of course, I'm supremely curious about, especially now that we've dove deeper and you're just a wealth of knowledge, Web3 and just obviously your own experiences. But what can we expect from CoinDesk Studios in the coming years in terms of development initiatives? Obviously, we talk about new technologies like AI. Yeah, just curious.
So CoinDesk Studios is 2 different things, really. It is one, our kind of how do we make our own products more interesting. And so whether that's Consensus, whether that's our audio and video products, we just add a layer of innovation and creativity to it. And so that we're going to keep doing. And then the other thing we do, one of the things that I think what's very interesting, and again, part of the reason with Gen Z, we talk to very seasoned professional marketers about how they think about this. Now, we also, as CoinDesk, get a ton of advertising from new crypto companies. And one of the things that we noticed was not all of them are seasoned marketers. A lot of time it's an engineer or an engineer and a UX person who have a great idea who suddenly raised $5 million. And now they're like, how do we bring this out?
That's what we work with.
Yeah. And so we at CoinDesk Studios basically wanted to say, hey, how about you come in, let us sort of teach you how to talk better to our audience. And so,
okay.
So like we are kind of we're almost an in-house creative agency that we will work with, anything from protocols to platforms to exchanges, a couple of NFT projects, not that many.
Have you heard of the Immutable Mindset?
Involved. The Immutable Mindset, a wonderful project. And so we basically utilize classic marketing techniques and classic media techniques to say, if you're going to spend money with us, why don't we help you talk to the audience better? The amount of people who are like, great, I'm going to run 26 weeks of advertising on a single banner creative. It's just because they don't know. Right. And that's the reality, right? It's like, oh, we have to run on CoinDesk. And you're like, what do you want to run? And they're like, oh, let me make something. Here you go.
Just
right.
some banners.
Yeah. And so I think that that's a lot of what we kind of do, is just try to help people connect to their audiences better, which I love that, because I think there's so many brilliant minds in the world, but that doesn't mean they've had 20 years of, being a CMO. Definitely. So we kind of help plug that hole.
Well, I have my final question in my head. Adam, was there a final question you wanted to ask, or should I just get this one out of my head? Ready. Okay. Well, I'm going to put your feet to the fire, kind of based on the conversations we've had, in terms of what we're going to realize over the next 5 to 10 years. I just, for the record, I watched Ready Player Me last night for, I don't know, the 30th time. Each time I watch it, this is
Ready Player One.
I'm sorry, Ready Player One. Ready Player One. Ready Player Me. My bad.
Fact check.
Shout out to Ready Player Me.
Shout out to Ready Player Me. That's absolutely right. But the more and more I watch it, the more and more honestly, I think that's I seriously think that's not the dystopian other side, right? But in terms of the gameplay, it feels like that's honestly where we're gonna go more and more. AR, you saw what Apple just did. Is Web3 going? I know you said you don't think so, but feet to the fire right now. In 5 years, is there going to be a Web3? Is it going to be bigger than Web2?
Well, let's. I think it's the wrong question. I only say because Web3 should be a natural evolution of Web2, right? But I also say it in the sense that if we're building on top of and just trying to make efficiency better, then there's an opportunity for us to do that. I'll reframe the question in my answer, which is, and we'll go back to our earlier conversation in hip hop. There's an amazing, I forget the name of it. There's a documentary on Netflix about the origins of hip hop. It's a 4-episode documentary.
I don't know, but I watched
one of them. Yeah, exactly. Hip hop explained. I don't know. It's something, whatever it is. And there's a moment where someone is talking about trying to convince Adidas that they should get in bed with Run DMC. And they're like, we're a German sneaker brand. The last thing we're going to do is hang out with these black kids in urban centers and doing it.
Talking about that in the movie Air too, I think.
Right, exactly. Right. And then they bring them to the show. And they say, my Adidas, everyone in the crowd holds up their sneakers. And then they're like, we got to get in bed with these people. Right. They saw it. And I bring that up because I do think it's the community that drives the interest. And our community is still pretty small and we have to get bigger. And I think whether are we going to be in headsets like Ready Player One, or we're all going to be connecting wallet, it's going to be driven by whether it's a need that people are saying you can't help but avoid. And so therefore, let us answer your call.
Agreed.
And that's the way we get there. And so again, that's why I really don't shit on the brands that are trying right now. There's a couple I do, but most of them I don't, because I want them to be trying, because someone is going to unlock something.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if Starbucks Odyssey is it yet. I don't know if Nike Swoosh is that yet. I don't know if LVMH is it yet, whatever. But someone's going to unlock something that's going to take us from 10,000 holders to 100,000 holders to 1 million holders. And I think the value of those things is going to go down. Yeah. The speculative value of those things goes down as the adoption goes up. And then someone's going to turn around at some point and say, oh, I can change the world this way. Right. And that's going to be the moment that I think we have the opportunity. I don't know if we're going to get there. But I think that we have the opportunity to try in a way that I think has borne out that it's possible.
Ooh, goosebumps. I hope you're right, Sam. Gosh, I hope you're right. I grew up overseas. So, to your point about, again, that person in Africa, that is just what I hope happens. So amazing show. Folks at home, we dove into Sam's insights into, what I did not expect: hip hop, Web3 culture, the role of brands in adopting new technologies, the potential use cases that bring the masses to this technology. What's CoinDesk doing? What do we see them doing in the future? We talked their podcast, Gen C, and what's going on over there. Guys, wealth of information. Sam Ewen, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. All right, let's go. We highly recommend checking out the Gen C podcast. For further exploration into blockchain and cryptocurrency, check Sam out at twitter.com/Sam Ewen. That's EWEN. And at CoinDesk.com. Again, appreciate you for joining us. Please, is there anything else you want to tell the people?
Just that I appreciate you guys. Thanks for giving me the time, and hopefully see you in Texas next year.
Heck yeah, we will. Heck yeah. And to listeners at home, appreciate you. Thanks for being a part of our journey. Until next time, please stay curious, my friends. Have a fantastic Friday.